G'day ladies and gentlemen, ScottyD here from the Australia's Tabletop Wargaming Network, and welcome in to another installment in our From Sprue to Tabletop series. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the ATWN with myself, ScottyD here, bringing you another From Sprue to Tabletop video where we look at the various ways you can go about hobbying, whether that is painting or assembling miniatures, or much like today's video, talking about how to paint terrain. And specifically what we are going to be looking at for our next installment of From Sprue to Tabletop is we are looking at how to paint MDF terrain, as it is one of the more popular styles of terrain that is available out there. Now, there is a lot of different ways that you can go about painting MDF terrain, but we're going to be jumping into the method I like to use later on in this video. But before we do, I want to thank everyone who has been watching our content here on YouTube. Really appreciate your patronage here, whether that's just subscribing, whether you've been a member for a bit. We are having a little bit of issues with YouTube on the monetization side at the moment, hopefully aiming to get them fixed in the next couple of weeks. So I do apologize about that, but letting you guys know as well. Or if you're just liking, commenting, all that fun stuff, sharing it with your friends, it is all greatly appreciated as we continue to grow the ATWN to new heights and to be able to reach more people into the international scene, whether you are just a hobbyist, whether you're a hobbyist and a gamer, or you are primarily a gamer as well. So let's jump into today's content, talking about painting MDF terrain. Now, as I was saying, there's lots of different ways that you can go about painting MDF terrain, and it just depends on how you actually want to go about it, how much time you want to spend, and the look you're wanting to achieve. Now, for the terrain that I'm working on today, I'm going to give a massive shout out to our new channel sponsor, Terrain, who has actually sponsored this video as well with a WTC style terrain set that we're going to be painting up to show you guys how I like to paint up terrain. Now, of course, a lot of other people are going to have different opinions and different variations on this. So much like all of our other From Sprue to Tabletop series videos, take what you like, don't use what you don't want to as well. Now, I've personally found the most effective and efficient way of painting up MDF terrain is to actually use spray paints to do so. It's relatively quick, easy. There's a lot of variety of spray paints out there, a lot of variety in terms of colors depending on the brand, and as well you can get really solid coverage and mileage out of spray cans compared to using an airbrush, or compared to using like house paint or any other forms of paint as well. So we are going to be using a whole host of different spray paint types in today's video as well, whether that is going to be stuff from Bunnings here in Australia or your local hardware store, from your office supply store as well. I've got some really nice colors that I've grabbed from an office supply store here in Australia called Officeworks, as well as some traditional miniature style painting spray cans, one being from Colorforge, which I'm excited to try out, along with Army Painter as well. But to start off with, let's talk a bit about where you should be doing your spray painting when you're painting up terrain, as well as some of the other stuff you'll need in addition to your spray paints. First things first, I recommend that when you paint with spray cans, paint outside, 100% in a well-ventilated area. Now, you'll see in the videos coming up throughout this video that I actually have a through garage. So I've got two garage doors, and so that gives me a nice through breeze coming in from behind me as I'm spray painting, meaning that none of the paint is coming in behind me, unless obviously the wind is coming the opposite direction, and then it kind of sucks because it blows back on me. So an area like that's really solid, or even just in an open backyard, or even undercover as well in a nice ventilated back patio or back covered deck, allows you to still get painting done when, you know, it's not the greatest weather, but it's still relatively warm outside to be able to do so. I'd also recommend that you wear gloves, you know, some disposable ones, some latex or plastic style gloves, just general houseworking style gloves you could use as well for when you are using spray cans, so you don't necessarily get them all over your hands. I've had too many mistakes happen with that and have to scrub my hands for hours to get the paint off, particularly with some of the brands we are using in today's video. And also wearing clothes that you do not care if you get paint on. I cannot stress that enough. If you are happy getting paint on your clothes, wear those ones. If you're wearing clothes that you don't want to get paint on and you do, you're going to be pretty ticked off with yourself. So make sure you do it straight off the rip. Now, next, I would recommend, if you're using a trestle table or any kind of tabletop, putting down a painting drop sheet. You can get a variety of different ones, whether it's just clear plastic or it's, you know, a different kind of plastic, like it might be like what I use. I've got one that it's got this felt underneath, and then it's actually got over the top, it's actually got the hard painting surface where you paint on top of. I also recommend, when painting MDF terrain, to also have cardboard box pieces, you know, panels that you've cut off from various cardboard boxes, whether it's shipping boxes or it's boxes that, you know, cookware or other various household items come in, are great. Cut them up into nice, decent sized panes, because it'll mean that you're able to paint a lot more efficiently, because you're able to put them on top of the drop sheet rather than just painting on top of the drop sheet. Because I found that when you just paint straight on the drop sheet, you can actually have things stick to the drop sheet, and it's not great over time as well. Then the next vital piece that I would actually recommend, even though you've got those cardboard panes, I would still recommend having like small balsa wood pieces of timber or spare MDF, whatever you have available in terms of timber, or if you need to, go to your local hardware store, grab some just balsa wood, cut it up into small, you know, you can cut them up into squares or rectangular blocks, however you want to do it, to actually prop your pieces of terrain up off the cardboard onto. So it's a lot easier to get onto the sides of all the different pieces. Well, that's what I do personally, and I find that it means that the pieces of terrain don't stick to it as easily. Now, the last item you're going to want to have on hand is paper towel. I cannot stress it enough. Paper towel has saved me in some really bad instances where spray cans have gone everywhere and I've needed to mop up the spray paint that has gone places where it probably shouldn't have. And so I've been able to get in there with paper towel because it's been handy and clean up not just the rattle can itself, but also a few other areas around it. Get the majority of paint off my hands, things like that, off the gloves and stuff. Strip off the gloves, they can get thrown away, and then throw on a new pair, you're good to go. So now that we've covered all of the different bits and pieces you'll need for actually painting MDF terrain, there's two different approaches when it comes to actually spray painting MDF terrain. You can either do it with them fully assembled, or you can do it in sub-assemblies, in individual pieces. Now, I do both in this video because we had an event, South Coast Siege, recently, where I was trying to get my terrain up and running from the stuff that Tabletop Terrain had supplied me, and I didn't end up being able to fully finish it, so I had to actually assemble a lot of it before fully completing it the way that I wanted to. So that means that we're actually able to show you both sides of the coin in terms of that spray painting. Sure, it's going to be some of the later steps for the assembled side of things, but the majority of the early steps are going to be when they're individual pieces as well. The first step when you are looking to paint MDF terrain, after popping it off the MDF pane that you've gotten from, you know, maybe you've bought some from Tabletop Terrain, maybe you've got it from somewhere else, who knows? After you've popped all the pieces out, the first thing you want to be doing, much like when you're painting miniatures, is to prime it. Now, the importance of priming isn't the same when it comes to priming your miniatures, but it is still very important. MDF, being timber fibers that have been glued together, actually means that they are going to absorb a lot, and I mean a lot of paint. I've done this from experience, and I can tell you that you need to get proper spray paint primer to actually prime your MDF. Otherwise, you're going to be sitting there doing coat after coat, and it's not going to look great when you're doing your painting of just regular paints. So I highly recommend getting a primer to start off with. By choosing to prime it first, what you'll actually do is you'll stop that moisture being absorbed into that MDF as you spray paint, meaning that you get kind of one or maybe two coats of a nice solid color as you are hoping to have on your terrain as well, with a great final look without having to do 3, 4, 5 different coats to get that look. And of course, with spray paints, they do go quite quickly. And so, you know, you get more mileage out of your spray cans by priming, spending a little bit more to get that primer rather than going, oh, I've got to get 2 cans to finish all of these terrains. Whereas, you know, it might cost more to get those 2 cans than getting 1 can and a can of primer, for example. Now, the primer I like to use is called Rust-Oleum. You can get it from Bunnings, or, you know, maybe if you're in different countries, look at your local hardware store, see if you're able to get it. There is their primer range, and I personally use either their matte black, or I also have used their gray primer as well, but they've got a few different colors primer that you can get your hands on to utilize. And so the way that I do prime my miniatures is that I start off by just priming one surface at a time on those wooden blocks, go around all of it, make sure I hit the sides as well, get a nice solid cover. I move around the table that I've actually got the pieces on as well, which is really handy, means that I don't have to rotate them as I am painting. I just move around the table instead. Or I just rotate the cardboard boxes instead of rotating the physical pieces. So as I do a set, I move that off to another table that's off to the side so that they're able to dry. So I'm able to get through more pieces a lot quicker, which means the process is a lot faster, which is an advantage of using those cardboard boxes, which I highly recommend if you're painting up a lot of terrain at once. Now, once I have completed priming each of the individual pieces, then we're going to get on to painting the various colors that I want to do on the different areas, because I have the colors in mind for what I want to do, the different looks and the effects and such as well. Now, the spray paints that I'm actually going to be using for the colors on my terrain here is actually from a range from Officeworks called the Montana spray paints. Now, these guys produce more graffiti art style spray paints. So they're actually really good, really nice, thick, solid covering, great range of colors and really solid pigment going onto the terrain. So you're able to actually get one nice solid coat. You might want to do a touch-up coat if you need to, but you don't necessarily have to. So it's really, really solid. I'd recommend getting these paints if you are in Australia. They're like less than $10 a can for the wide variety of colors that they've got that you're going to want to use. Highly recommend them. But if you're not in Australia, you can probably find an equivalent, or you might even be able to find these guys on like Amazon or other places as well. Now, the first pieces that I'm looking to put color down onto is actually the floors for the ruins, as they are actually going to be the same colors as the base plates that I'm using. You know, with WTC or GW layouts, they do have specified terrain footprints now, and so WTC Terrain from Tip-Top Terrain did previously come with MDF Terrain markers in terms of their base plates, but now they're actually doing neoprene ones, which is absolutely phenomenal, and I'm keen to show you guys those when I get my hands on some as well. Now, the color I'm using to do up the floors, same as the base plates from the Montana range, is called Slate. It's a relatively dark gray. It looks really nice, and it's not like super black or super dark gray. You can still see there's gray in there, but it's still really effective in conveying that depth of tone in the gray. Now, I've placed some of those spare wooden blocks underneath each of the floor pieces, and I spray my way around all of them, getting them all done so that we're able to actually get the sides of the MDF as well as the face of them as well. Now, after I have started going through the floor pieces at the same time, I actually take the same color, so the Slate from Montana spray paints, and what I do is I actually want to do this fading effect on each of the ruin walls on both the internal and external, because I like having the same look and I think it's great to have. So I grab the slate, and what I do, I kind of spray that bottom third of the ruin, whether that's the 2-story or 3-story, I typically keep it the same, and I spray right along, and I keep the two pieces for that ruin together, whether that's the 2-story or the 3-story, I keep those pieces side by side, so then I just move my hand straight across and I hit them all in the one spray to really get a nice even coverage of that slate gray when I'm going over them. Now, when doing this step as well, whilst keeping them in their pairs, I also tend to do the same style at the same time. So I'm doing all the 3-story ruins at once, or I'm doing all the 2 stories at the same time. Now, as the gray is still drying, this is the important thing. I then grab the main color that I'm wanting to paint the ruins, whether that's the 3-story ruins, I'm using a color called Powder Blue, which is a really vibrant blue. Or if it's the 2-story ruins, I'm going with a more muted orange, which is called Clockwork Orange. Now, what I'm doing is I'm coming from the opposite direction, so the tops of the ruins, and I'm spraying down over kind of the bare primer where that area is, but also over the top of that third that we've come up with that slate color. So it kind of gets this nice granular fade through to have a really cool effect on the table. Now, we do this as much as we can and controlling it. Some are going to, go a little bit less over the slate. Some are going to go a little bit more. That's okay. What you can do is you can kind of go back in, add some more slate if you want to, add some more orange, kind of get that fade to where you want it to. That's a really good thing about using spray paints, is you can really find that level where you want to. I'm happy with a bit of asymmetry, so I don't mind having one ruin have one level of depth, another ruin having another. I think it looks great doing it that way. Now, when I have done these, I leave them for ample time to dry. I typically might leave them for, 2 to 3 hours. As I'm doing spray painting on multiple setups at a time, what I'll do is I'll pop them off to the side, set up the next batch and get them done. And it'll take me some time to go through those and then let those ones dry. I might have a lot drying at the one time, maybe give it a few hours, come back to that first batch, rotate them out, rotate the ones that were drying on the spray area off, so that I can continue that first batch. And that's the real power of that rotation, using those box panes to actually swap out what you're doing. So then flip them over, do the exact same technique on the internals of the walls as well. Now, whilst we wait for these guys to actually dry, I actually decide that I'm going to work on getting the containers done, because there is 4 containers that come in this WTC terrain set that we need to get up and ready to go. So I'm taking a bit of a different approach with painting the containers as I am the ruins, but I do start off with priming them. Of course, it's super important to do so. But what I'm wanting to do here is, instead of just doing, solid colors or a fade, I'm actually wanting to do a color undertone, like a gray undertone, before hitting them with metallic and then some black, to actually show like some scorch marks or some, soot build up on them as well. So again, I start off with that primer. I then start off on these ones with a neutral gray tone called Dumbo. Yes, that is the name of that tone from the Montana range, and it's solid covering over the containers. I do most of the 5 sides, so the 4 sides and the top. Then when it's dry, I flip it over, I finish off the sides and the top that was the bottom previously as well. Now, considering we are working on this WTC terrain from Tabletop Terrain, it is absolutely fitting that they are sponsoring today's video. So let's talk about them a little bit. Tabletop Terrain are an Australian-based company that supports a large number of tournament organizers within Australia, and also a lot of individuals as well, by providing quality laser cut MDF terrain such as the WTC set we have been working on, as well as a variety of other products like neoprene gaming mats, neoprene terrain bases, and a whole host of other products and customized services as well. Now, whether you're looking for the WTC style terrain that we have been working on today, or if you're wanting to grab terrain that is suited towards the GW Pariah Nexus layouts, then Tabletop Terrain has got you covered with their affordable terrain sets with both styles of terrain forms available. They have also been working with members of the community to enhance the aesthetic of the look of their terrain. If you're wanting more detailed terrain like the terrain that we are working on, it's got the windows, scorch marks, things like that, or maybe you're just looking for a more simplified style of terrain to fill out your tournament terrain collection, so you're able to run events in an affordable way, Tabletop Terrain has also got you covered. Now, they have also got a variety of different neoprene gaming mats available that have got the Pariah Nexus deployment maps already marked out on them, correctly sized as well, so you're able to save some time when you're playing games on them as well. So if you do want to check out what Tabletop Terrain have got on offer and support an Australian business, why don't you check out the links down in the description below to the Down Under 40K web store, or they're also on Etsy, where you can check out a whole host of products available that you may want to pick up. And if you do end up picking up anything from them, make sure to tell them the ATWN sent you. Now, as we've been waiting for the various pieces of WTC terrain to dry as we've been painting them, it's time to move on to the next steps for them. First, we're going to be finishing off these containers. Now, the metal look that I'm looking to get for the silver containers, I'm actually going to be using Colorforge's Steel Forge Grey. Now, this is the first time I'm using Colorforge. I'm really excited, and it comes out great in the end. Now, when I'm doing this, I'm only spraying each of the sides a couple of times, and I'm presently surprised that it managed to get a decent coverage over each of the sides with only 2 to 4 sprays per side. Now, after I've actually done that metal, I then grab Army Painter Matte Black and do some small sporadic sprays of their black paint over the containers to get some scorching marks going, which does come up great. I'm really happy with how these containers look, and they're going to contrast quite well with the vibrant look of the terrain as well. Now, when we get to the 2 and 3 story ruins, I actually want to paint up their window frames on the outward faces of them, which means I need to break out my painter's tape and a hobby knife, where I'm going to cover up each of the faces, and then I'm going to make sure that it's only the window frames that are showing, because that is what I'm wanting to paint up on them. Now, this step can be done either with it in pieces, or you can do it when they're assembled. Of course, I do it in both. On the 3-story ruins, I typically did it when they were in single pieces, but when I was doing it in some of the 2-story ruins, I had to do it when they were assembled. Now for the 3-story ruins window frames, I decided to use the same neutral light gray color as the containers, which was the Dumbo gray. However, for the 2-story ruins, because they're warmer in tone, I wanted to go with a cooler gray. And so I decided to actually pick up the light shark gray tone, the light gray tone called Shark from the Montana range for the window frames on the 2-story ruins. Now, I do each of the faces of ruins at the same time to ensure that I don't get them mixed up when they are in individual pieces, so then that way I can match each one together. Even if they do, the gradients usually line up pretty well, so I can match them when they do get mixed up, but I want to avoid that if at all possible. And I make sure that I'm very careful when I'm painting up that I don't get it anywhere that it shouldn't be when I am doing these light gray tones, because if I do, then it's going to show up quite easily on the actual ruins themselves compared to the darker gray or the color tone. Now, after we've done each of the outward facing walls, getting those windows frame painted up, I then just remove the painter's tape really easily, and then I'm choosing to actually punch out each of the windows. Now, whilst in game for WTC ruins, they do typically stay shut, blocking visibility and stuff, but as this terrain set is actually going to be our stream terrain set for a lot of events here in New South Wales, I wanted to have them actually open, even though in game they won't be. So when we're doing live tournament coverage, you can actually see what units are hiding in what corner and such as well from both ends of the table. So you're not just going, oh, I'm not sure what's actually under that corner. No, you can swap cameras and you can kind of see, okay, there is a unit down in that corner ruin over the other side of the table, which I think is really important for gaming commentary to know that kind of stuff. So that's why we're doing it. And it's going to be showcased during our Gong Hammer coverage. So now with the base plates done for all the ruins, we've got the ruins done. They're all assembled, same with the containers. We've got them all set up on the table with one of the neoprene gaming mats from Tabletop Terrain underneath them. So they look absolutely stunning all together. And I'm really happy with how all of the terrain looks as a whole when it does come out and finish. Yes, the insides of the window frames aren't painted, but they do have that kind of darker exposed laser cut look, which I do quite like the contrast of to the lighter gray. So I'm happy with that for now. And I do also want to go in over time and add in actual scorch marks. I want to do like vines going up the sides in various spots on the sides of the buildings to make sure, you know, give it that aged look. And also do some other effects on the floors and stuff, as well as the base plates if I get a chance to, but I'm going to chip away at that over time than trying to rush to get it done. But for now, I'm going to leave these terrain pieces like that. They're all ready to go for use during our Gong Hammer coverage. I'm really excited to see how it looks on the table. All right, ladies and gentlemen, well, that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for hanging out with us and learning about how to go about painting MDF terrain. If you have any thoughts of your own or any feedback or any questions, feel free to let us know down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video and found it informative, feel free to hit it with a like. And if you want to continue seeing more content from us here at the ATWN, feel free to hit that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell, make sure to be notified as to when we are releasing more content here on our YouTube channel. Also, if you do want to catch us live where we're doing Warhammer 40k tournament previews, hobbying sessions, and live tournament coverage, make sure to follow us over at the Australis TWN Twitch channel, where we do those hobbying sessions, live tournament coverage, as well as here on YouTube, and the tournament previews on Twitch as well. I also want to give a massive shout out to everyone who does financially support us, whether you support us on Twitch as a subscriber, whether you are or were previously a YouTube member. I'm going to keep you YouTube members up there for the time being until we get these issues resolved, as well as those supporting us via Ko-Fi. All of your financial contributions really do help us cover our costs as a business and be able to invest in more streaming equipment to increase our coverage quality of the Australian Warhammer 40k tournament scene and such as well. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching today's video. Thank you so much to Tabletop Terrain for sponsoring the network as a whole and another video here. If you haven't already, make sure to head over, check them out, links in the description and such as well. But ladies and gentlemen, I've been ScottyD, and I hope to catch you in the next one.